Welcome, welcome, welcome to our grand finale. Yes, we are about to reveal who wins the Start Strong writing contest. And I know you are super excited about it. I mean, I am. I don't even know who wins because you know what? You're going to play a part in who wins because what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the finalists and then it'll be up to you to vote on who the actual winner is. Now, the actual winner of the Start Strong Writing Challenge is going to win a free first chapter read, and this is one of our wonderful personalized author services we have here at AutoCrit. If you're not familiar with AutoCrit is a home for writers. We do things like this challenge. We have our online writing desk, which is a fully functional online writing application where you can plan and edit your novel right there on our website in the cloud. Saves all your work. You can work on multiple devices. And then we have our AutoCrit community, home to the wonderful people you might be seeing filling up our chat. Hi out there, AutoCrit community. You're all wonderful. I love you all. And we have our AutoCrit Academy, which includes things sort of like what we're doing here. Although typically on our live stream, what we'll have is some sort of educational content about writing. Today, we're going to have some fun and go right into reading all of your entries, the finalist entries. I have whittled it down to 10. It was very difficult. Very difficult. I love it though when you make my life difficult. That's great. It means that you are going to you're leveling up, and I really feel like that. I feel like every challenge it's getting harder and harder. I don't know if we're just I know a lot of you are taking our classes and you're leveling up, but then we're getting new people that are awesome, and it's just great. I am just I don't know, I'm beside myself. But 2023, it's going to be a good year. I could feel it already. And for those of you who are participated in the challenge, there were quite a few of you who submitted. Great job. This was a great way for you to begin your year. You did it. You got your 1,000 words in. You followed your prompts. You got it in the deadline. Fantastic. And just keep that in mind. We're going to have another challenge next week. So stay tuned for that. We're just going to go right into the next one. And yeah, well, let's get going. Let's get going. That's enough introducing here. So yes, the Start Strong challenge was to deal with our goals for 2023, and everybody comes into the year with different goals. One thing you can do to achieve your goals is develop systems, to develop methods that get your they say it, button chair, hands on keyboard, bit hawk. I think I saw that on like writing excuses. Yeah. I love that. Big hawk, yes, button chair, hands on keyboard. And yeah, that's what we're trying to do, right? We're giving you the tools, giving you a little incentive, a little challenge to get involved, and you rose to the challenge. Awesome. Great job, everybody. The rules were we gave you three prompts. Well, 5 altogether. This is all just a recap. For those of you just coming in, this is what our participants had to do. They had to include a bag of dominoes. They had to include the word showered. It had to be set in a zoo. They had to have an escaped animal as part of it. And they had to go into the writer's desk and make sure there were no generic descriptions. So that being said, this was a little challenge I posed to the community. How many people do you think did not follow the rules? How much of a percentage do you think did not actually follow the prompt? And I asked the community this question. We had a little contest out of it. And it was a range from about, I think 1% was the lowest and 33% was the highest. Well, you kind of got the range right because the correct answer was 16%. 16% did not follow the guidelines. And Kat, I know you're there. You got it spot on. And so you actually now have a free entry into a free admission into our next workshop, which I'll talk about later. So I'm not going to tease that yet, but it's already there. You'll see it in your courses and everything. So go to my course. Yes, Wendy, you were so close with 15%, but 16, it was right on the money. So good for you, Kat. Although, and honestly, 16% seems high. It's not too bad, because this was a rather complicated list of instructions. We had the three prompts, we had the twist, you had to go into the writer's desk. And if you didn't do one of those things, if you're like, oh, I kind of missed it, don't worry, this happens. It's a common thing, especially for newer writers. It's one thing why you get rejected. Just keep that in mind because it does behoove you to follow rules. Now, if you don't really like all these rules and restrictions, our next challenge is going to be a lot more open. So, you know, go ahead and involve yourself in that one. All right. Yes, I already talked about the prompt. We talked about the twists. Where was the biggest fail of that 16%? Um, well, I don't know what you mean by biggest fail. There were people that didn't follow the generic descriptions, and so they had quite a few. There were people that didn't have all the words in there. So mostly though, it was one or the other. There wasn't like somebody who just missed the mark entirely, which I actually was surprised because I'll be honest, we've done other challenges where you get the weirdest entries. Like you usually get some spam entries. We really didn't get anything like that. So there wasn't any like outlandish what in the world is this? You know, it's like trying to sell me essential oils or something, which is usually what we get. So congratulations, whoever that person was. They didn't submit this time. So that's fantastic. All right. Some of you have been saying that you loved all this accountability going on. We challenged you to check in every day if you were part of the Autocrit community, and we're still kind of tabulating all of that. But I think there's about 19 of you that will be eligible for that core group of prizes. I'll be posting that in the community though. And you can kind of spot check me I'm going to post the list. And if you're like, I should be on the list, what happened? I'll go back and I will try to make sure that I didn't miss you or something like that. But yes, the engagement on the forums was great. Well, we want to keep that up. We're certainly going to continue our daily check-in. It's just a part of AutoCrit. But one thing we're going to do is we are going to start an accountability club. Ta-da! Yes, for our professional members. And that is going to be on Mondays at 11 a.m. Now you might be like, that is not a good time for me. Fair enough. We that's just where it's going to be for now. But we'll add more potentially based on interest and whatnot. We tried to pick a time that was early in the week to get that accountability going, and then try to pick something that was good for multiple time zones. We do keep in mind we have an international audience, so it's very challenging for us. So if you love the idea, but 11 a.m. on Mondays is Eastern is not good for you, just let us know in the AutoCrit community, and maybe we can come up with an other option. Some people are like, that's a little early. Yeah, I understand. What time would that be in the UK? I think that would be like 4 or 5 p.m., right? Because isn't it 5 hours later? You'll have to correct me on that. I don't know. A daylight savings time. It's so confusing. All right. So definitely you're here for the finalists, aren't you? Of course you are. So I'm going to go ahead and start reading the finalists. The first two I'm just going to read out loud, and then the next ones I'll be able to display on the screen. I'm going to go ahead and give the title, and I didn't actually ask you whether or not it was okay to credit you on air. So because of that, I'm not going to. But if you are here, you can certainly out yourself. And a lot of you are here. So feel free to do that. But just in case you wanted to remain anonymous, I'm going to allow you to do so. No drum roll. All right. So the first entry is entitled The Zoo. It's very fitting, right? Right to the chase. Okay. The tall, rectangular metal container thumped onto the loading bay, and the Humvee sped off into the night. Sergeant Carl Higgs pressed the elevator button. Huge, heavy silo doors clanged open. With practiced precision, he wheeled the crate onto the platform like he'd done for years in the top secret underground facility in Dulce, New Mexico. He and Corporal Keith Barrow stepped alongside it. How far does this one go? Keith asked. All the way. Wow, to the zoo? They don't like to call it that, but yeah. The elevator whined and began the downward drift. The neon numbers blinked each floor. 1, 2. Carl sniffed the air. Damn, Keith, is that you? He wiped his nose. When's the last time you showered? Keith chuckled. I just got back to the base after visiting my kid. I didn't have time. Carl shook his head. The elevator hummed on. 3, 4. How long are we going to be here? Keith asked. Long enough. Do you have some cards? Carl sighed. No. Keith dug into his pocket. I have these. He dragged out a Crown Royal pouch and shook it. Clacks echoed. What's that? A bag of dominoes. Dominoes? Really, Keith? My kid gave them to me, he grinned. My bag, though. 5, 6. How's he doing after the divorce? Keith shrugged. Okay, I guess. I spend as much time with him as I can. You're lucky, Carl stared at the elevator numbers. Lucky? I'm stuck down here with you. You have a son. Carl tapped the container. One day you might be able to bring him down here to see them. Keith shifted on his feet. Honestly, I hope he never sees any of this. Or them. 7. The doors parted and the two men exited, pushing the crate out into a long corridor. I gotta piss, Keith said. Christ, man, I just got here, remember? Fine, I'll load this, but make it quick. Supposed to be 2 on the release. Keith darted for the restroom. Carl slipped paperwork from his jacket and scanned it. Gray, the last one, of course. With a sigh, he shoved the crate along the quiet hall, the container's wheels gliding across the tile floor as if on air. As he rolled the box along, he inspected the row of doors. Next to each was a thick glass window. Inside were landscapes, each one different, each to accommodate those inside. Outside the door marked gray, Carl nudged the crate against the entrance, and the two joined with a clink. Seals whished. Footsteps echoed. Carl turned to see Keith headed toward him, tucking his shirt. The metal container rocked. What the? Carl whipped around to the box and jerked his hands away. The seals popped. Long, slender fingers wiggled between the frames. Carl backed up. Keith stopped in his tracks. More fingers wriggled into the crack. The space between the container and the door widened. Ashen arms slipped through, then shoulders. Little gray beings flooded the floor, with taller ones forcing the box away. It banged against the far wall, and another seal split. Monstrous scale-covered reptilian humanoids jimmied open their door. Oh shit, Keith said, his eyes locked on the increasing gap. Carl bolted to Keith, grabbing his arm, and dragged him away. We gotta get out of here. He pointed to the lizard-like creature stomping out into the passageway. Their spit is acid. The creature squared off, eyeing each other. The two men ran toward the elevator. Keith hit the red emergency button. Carl grabbed the phone. We're in the zoo. There's been a breach. Greys and reptilians. They've escaped. We need assistance. A corner camera whined its lens toward them. Get us the hell out of here. Sirens blared. Red light consumed the hallway. The elevator button blackened. Keith's chest heaved. They sealed us in. Carl glared at the camera. Damn you. Get us out. 3 shadowy forms wavered in front of the elevator doors. Within seconds, the figures materialized into solid beings. Their glistening, almond-shaped black eyes stared, unblinking, from their bulbous heads. They raised their spindly hands. A wave rippled the air. Carl and Keith slumped to the floor. The camera lens focused on them. They disappeared. Carl blinked awake in bright light, and he rolled over into a small sand dune. The grit scraped his palms. Beside him, Keith moaned and struggled to his feet. Where are we? Carl rose to a knee, scooped the sand, and let it drift between his fingers. His brow deepened to a V. Still Jolce, I think. How did we get outside the base? I don't know. Carl put his hands across his brow and surveyed the surroundings. He froze and gulped hard. His hands dropped slowly. What you see? Keith asked. Carl pointed. There, beyond the dune, white walls and a ceiling, and a glass window next to a door. The men slogged through the sand to the shimmering pane. On the other side, gray heads swayed, their empty black eyes fixed a penetrating gaze on the men. The reptilians' elliptical pupils gleamed pitiless cruelty as they slinked amid the grays to the window. Hisses splattered the glass, and it smoldered. All the eyes studied. None offered reprieve or mercy. Carl banged his fists against the window. They've joined forces. Keith shuddered. This is what we get for locking them away down here. They're people like us. They're aliens. They aren't like us. Carl shoved his shoulder into a sealed door. It didn't budge. It's their zoo now. His arms felt limp at his sides. We're screwed. Keith's legs buckled and he plopped to the ground. Everyone on Earth is screwed. Who knows what they'll do because of this place? He tugged the bag of dominoes from his pocket and cradled it in his hands. My son. Carl cupped his eyes to the window. Shards of the elevator door lay strewn in an empty corridor. They're all gone. Keith's lips trembled. Earth is their zoo now. All right, so that's our first entry there. All right. Oh, I love it. You all be asleep so you all have fun. Yes. Well, like I said, we could do another time. All right, the next one is called Literal Prophecies. No, thank you. I tried not to bare teeth as I told yet another old man I didn't want to play a game of dominoes. They weren't even being creepy about it, so I couldn't be rude. Apparently, if a teenage girl was alone at a picnic table at the zoo plucking tiles out of a bag of dominoes, it was a signal that she was lonely and needed a friend. I mean, I was a little lonely. I didn't have many friends, but that wasn't why I was there. Yes, technically, they had started out life as dominoes, but I had painted runes over the dots. They were an integral part of my fortune telling kit. They sold actual rune stones, but those were expensive, and I got the whole bag for a quarter at a garage sale. Besides, I used my own symbols: the dragon, the blade, the rabbit, the dog. I didn't know what they meant, but it was trouble, some kind of disaster coming, and what that could entail when there were predators made me nervous. I placed down two more runes, the hammer, and that stupid baby tile that came out horrible and I needed to repaint it. It also wasn't necessary. The distant sound of shouting kids from a school trip had already told me what was at stake. Where? I need to know where, I muttered as I fished in the bag one more time. The frog. The reptile house? This is my best bet. I scooped all the dominoes back into their bag and took off. Brightly painted signs pointed to the cinder block of a building where all the lizards lived. Damn it, I wanted to see the snakes. A 10-ish-year-old boy was kicking at the glass doors. He had a couple of other boys with him, and they radiated grumpiness and boredom. A sign on the door said in cartoonish letters, "Closed from remodeling." Spec freaking tacular. Someone was going to let out an alligator or something while trying to build it a new swimming pool. Hey, stop that. Shh. I waved my hands at them, and the one who had been kicking the door sneered at me. You don't get to tell us what to do. He grinned back at his friends, who laughed like he had said something hilarious. And that was a prime example of why I didn't want kids. Leave now, or I'll tell your teachers. Not only did I catch you vandalizing zoo property, you were also torturing small animals. I'd bet they believe it. That last bit was just extra to get them out of the way. I wasn't actually going to do it. Panic flashed across the kid's face before he turned tail and ran. After exchanging confused glances, his friends followed. I must have accidentally touched a nerve. That was worrying. Whatever. I had more important things to deal with, like getting into the stupid lizard house, where there was probably a rogue alligator or something. What was I doing with my life? A crash inside the building made me jump. Screams! I kicked the door with absolutely no plan what to do if I got in. More screams, and the roof exploded. Rubble showered down, and I cowered against the wall. Bits of cement rained around me, one clipping my arm with bruising force. A resounding crack echoed through the air. The world faded away while my brain refused to understand what it saw. Something flying, spewing fire. A dragon! An actual dragon! What the hell? Since when were my runes that freaking literal? It landed on the ground with a heart-stuttering thud. It wasn't huge, about as tall as an Irish wolfhound. That was enough for something with claws on the tip of its wings the size of steak knives and a head like a squash-nosed crocodile. It opened its mouth, revealing teeth built for tearing, and it wailed. It cried like a lost baby. The landing had hurt it. When it hit the pavement, one of its bat-like wings had crumpled. It took one gaze at me and hobbled over, cooing and growling, almost like speech. I straightened up, ready to run, but it wrapped its uninjured wing around my leg and keened. What the actual hell? We're going to have to shoot her, quick! Someone contain the witnesses! The voice came from inside the ruined reptile house, and that was my cue to leave, but there was still the matter of the dragon clinging to me like a frightened toddler. The baby, the dog. Knowing what I had to do didn't mean I had to like it. Fine. I didn't care for kids, but this was an innocent creature asking for my help, and I did love dogs. Hey, girl, you want to come home with me? I asked in my sweetest voice. She cooed in response, staring at me with dewy golden eyes, and just like that, I was ready to die for her. Okay, sweetie, follow me, and everything will be all right. I started to walk, and the dragon let me go. She followed after me, limping along with its broken wing curled up by her chest. Never mind what I was going to do with an injured mythological creature. I was an actual oracle. I'd figure it out. All right. All right. I can bring up the next one on my screen here. And the next one is entitled. And by the way, I'm not like giving comments in between, not because these stories aren't awesome, but because I'm not trying to sway your vote. So you won't be like, oh, Daniel really loved that one. I like all of these. These are all great. All right. So the next one is called Smash That Like Button, Ring That Notification Bell. This feels a little close to home. So let's see how this goes. All right. Where's my. Sorry. Aha. Our YouTube channel was picking up momentum. We wanted to take it to the next level. Those likes and subscribes aren't going to come from stupid safe pranks. Our viral break hadn't come yet. We had to be on the verge of something huge. Pulling into the parking lot, my stomach lurched. Was this the stupidest idea we have ever had? I took my time getting out of the car and locking up. Chad was steps ahead of me, waving at me, all our gear bumbling around his neck. He pulled the industrial wire cutters out of his backpack to clip the lock at the entrance of the zoo. I considered taking part of his equipment load. Being the face of our YouTube channel was my job, and he was the behind the scenes guy, so I didn't offer to take any of his work from him. The only light was from the full moon, making it hard to navigate where we were in the midst of hundreds of wild animals. The zoo map was covered by plexiglass on a tall stand to our left. Chad studied it, then gestured toward our right. My head whipped around my shoulder, unconvinced we were alone, but at the same time chastising myself for being a wimp. Adrenaline ran through my veins and warmed my body. A twig snapped and I shivered. Walking next to Chad down the path, a cold, coppery stench came from his backpack. I turned my head away from him and inhaled a deep breath of the crisp night air. My gut felt uneasy about our life choices. Was this a huge mistake? Having a friend who was an intern at the zoo provided us with the inside scoop. The zookeepers were taking inventory tonight and wouldn't be doing their usual rounds. Hunter said he would meet up with us to be there for the live stream. He had made it clear that he didn't want to be part of our prank. It wasn't worth losing his internship. We followed where the map had directed us to the lion enclosure. We walked without speaking for about 5 minutes. My stomach gurgled and my throat was scratchy and dry. A sign with a picture of a lion and the name Goliath was illuminated by the reflection of the moon as we approached the cages. All right, you ready for this? Should we go live? Chad asked. Not yet. I'll text Hunter and tell him we're here. Chad grabbed a plastic bag squishing with red liquid out of his backpack. He held it up. His eyes lit up. Here, kitty kitty, waving my hand across my nose. Ooh, dude, you stink. A little inconvenience for this epic treat. A growl and deep snarl came from the bushes behind us. The hair on my arms prickled against my jacket sleeves. I turned on my phone flashlight and shined it into the greenery, a pair of glowing eyes reflected in the light. My heart dropped into my gut. This was the worst idea ever. What the? Hey, something is out there. We got to get the hell out of here. Hunter smirked as he emerged. I winced as an object came flying toward my head. I rolled my eyes. Censor for YouTube. You dumbass. Trying to hide my embarrassment as I bent over to pick up the velvet bag of dominoes that landed next to my feet. Hunter laughed, impressed by himself. Damn, I should have been recording, Chad said. Not about to show them I was shaken up. I didn't lift my head, avoiding eye contact with both of them. I figured you guys would be here at any time since it's dark and the zoo was closed. I've been in the bush for half an hour. He rubbed his hand up and down the back of his neck, working out the stiffness. Chad's eyes lit up as he switched the camera's power on. We're here at the Rose Park Zoo. How did the kitties like the treats we brought them? He held up the bag of bloody meat in front of the camera, then turned it towards the enclosure. Hunter moved away off to the side so he wouldn't be in the shot. He would for sure lose his internship if anyone found out he was involved in us taunting the lion. What sounded like an air compressor letting out its pressure hiss came from behind where Hunter was standing. Spinning round, I saw a brown blur explode from the bush and encompass him. Blood spurted and showered the pavement from underneath the brown, hairy creature. I froze while Chad turned the camera onto the spectacle of the body being devoured. Chad dropped his gear, tumbling onto the ground. We stood in horror as Goliath clawed at what was becoming shreds of Hunter's torso. The blood-stained face of the beast stopped chewing and glared up at us. Run! I screamed, breathing so hard I thought my throat was bleeding. We made it to the gate before looking over my shoulder. No predator in sight. Praying that it had gone back to consuming Hunter and had decided not to pursue us, I jogged to the parking lot. Panting next to the car, I pulled out my phone and logged into YouTube. Our stream was still live. The camera pointed toward the lion as it continued working on its human dinner. 1.2 million viewers. I smiled. All right. The next story is entitled Shaping Topiaries. I almost forget that they're living things, not sculpture pieces. Perfect features, perfect houses, perfect kids. Everything about them shaped by marketing professionals, like shrubs trained into preposterous topiaries, on their way to my house, ready to eat. As it turns out, they weren't my biggest trouble of the night. Top of the refrigerator clean, check. Baseboards touched up with paint, check. Bathroom tile grout, bleached, check. Again, why are we doing this? I groaned, just as I picked up a hint of foul smell. Honey? Steve laughed. It's way too late to back up now. Besides, we need to meet more people, and this progressive dinner is the perfect opportunity. Showered? Check. Random facial hairs plucked? Check. Teeth brushed, mouthwashed, and whitened? Check, check, and check. My insides twisted. Our neighbors treat me like I'm some bedlam. Remove pet fur? Check. Confirm shoes match? Check. Make sure blouse isn't on backwards or inside out? Check. Does anyone do progressive dinners anymore? I have neither time nor interest in showing off china, embroidered napkins, or some complicated recipe I mastered. I had to admit, though, my porcini sauce at least resembled my nona's, even if I hated mushrooms. Tartlets in the oven, check. Fruit chart. I can't say that word. Charcuterie board, grilled, chilled, and on the table, check. Marinated olives, check. I pulled down the whole bag of Domino's sugar, dumping more into the pitcher. Sweetness for unsavory people. I was determined not to make Stephanie Muller's mistake of undersugaring their tea. That's when the odor assaulted my nose again. What's that rotten smell? What? Steve inhaled. Did you take out the garbage like I asked? You watched me do it just before you asked me to sweep the garage and vacuum behind the refrigerator. You've got to relax or you'll end up hyperventilating again. The stench drilled into my nose. I only smell the olives, he said, swiping a few and ruining my arrangement. Before I could investigate, the doorbell rang. I wasn't ready for the menagerie to transform my house into a zoo at feeding time. None of these human topiaries had been here previously, unless you count that threatening letter from the homeowners association. Please make sure your garbage receptacles are not visible from the drive. Further violation of our covenant will result in a fine. Thank you for your immediate compliance. Or the time they taped the note to the front door. Dear neighbor, since you appear to be unable to pick up after your dog, I have gathered your pet's waste for you and left it on your doorstep to demonstrate how it is done. I have an indoor cat, Ruby. No dogs. Now, these neighbors gathered on my front porch like a pitchfork mob, waiting to be let inside. I wanted to scream, don't answer it! But Steve opened the door with a warm greeting, which was met with a few grunts. Then came a shriek. Ruby had to have escaped. Even worse, Steve darted out after her, leaving me alone with them. Before pushing myself into their natter, I contorted my face into a partry smile. My mouth so dry, I feared a croak would take the place of words. I couldn't meet their eyes. They're critiquing my every move. Footfalls weren't enough to muffle their whispered comments. Had to come just to see what her house was like. I know, not what I imagined. Giggling. My confidence shrank with each step they took into my house as I led them into the dining room. I fixed a plate for myself when Amy Grunder grabbed it without even saying thank you and began stuffing her face. She eyed me and said, I figured you'd want a bigger portion than that. Did she just call me fat? Heat rose in my face and spread to my ears. Steve told us you've been working all day. I imagine you haven't had much time to eat. I emptied my wine glass and ducked into the kitchen. The stench in there reminded me of the time Dad forgot his fishing bait in the hot car. A hard swallow fought to keep my breakfast down. No way they hadn't caught a whiff, but I was over it by now, mostly. Is this wine really Camus? I overheard Amy ask, her tone full of patronizing attitude. Bless her heart. I bet she bought those Camus boxes off eBay to try and impress, Breck Ackerman added, guzzling the last bit of his wine. Probably Sutter home, more giggling. Poor Steve, confided to her husband Tom. You notice their photos? He doesn't smile in any of their pictures together. Did she just judge my marriage a failure based on a couple of photos? At that moment, I hated me even more than they did. Revulsion shook my insides, unlocking something deep. I faced the failure they detected. That's when I realized they came to reassure themselves of their perfection, measuring qualities they detest in themselves. That stink. I stifled a gag at the sight of the shimmering pot on the stove, the odor source, bubbled up like grease and fat from broiled bones, fleshly colored worms skimmed the top of the sauce. Skimmed the top of the sauce. They smacked and licked with movement like maggots, but much larger. Bloated to the size of thumbnail and withstanding the heat, I fished out onto a napkin and took a closer inspection. Yes, the squirming larvae, working on its two mouth parts for feeding, must have flourished inside the dried mushrooms. These people want a little downward comparison? I'll feed them. It's what they came for. After all, their identities are shaped by what we consume. The clue of worms slithered in the sauce as I poured it into a lady gravy boat with a spout. I pushed open the dining room door, presenting the appetizer. Finally, I'll no longer have to wonder what's eating them. Turn off the oven? Check. Release bedlam? Check. Reshape topiaries? Check. All right. The next entry, hold on here, is entitled. Nope, that's one I already read. Uh, let's see. Abducted. Abducted is the next one. Somebody's like, I'm not hungry anymore. Thank you so much, Samantha. I appreciate that. Don't go to Sharon Gray's party. I don't think that was Sharon's story, was it? I thought Sharon's story was the never mind. She can tell you which story it was. You shouldn't have run. Running only causes the pain to be worse. The voice in my head is telling me. What voice? It is just the splitting headache I have. It is blinding, all white instead of the usual darkness behind my eyelids. Relax. Take some deep breaths. The pain will subside quicker. The voice again. I'm not hearing it with my ears. It feels much closer to me. In my head, yes, you are not hearing me. Yet you understand me. Are you reading my thoughts? Are you in my head? Panic begins to well up in my throat, making it harder to breathe. Another spike of pain from the headache. Your brain has been rewired for telepathy. We added a chip soon after we brought you here. That is partly where your headache comes from. The other is from the matter transference. I think your humans refer to it as beaming up. I detect a slight smile in the creature's voice. Creature, alien, what the hell? My breathing quickens. I was there in the desert, a known hotspot for UFO activity. I was looking for them, listening to the stillness and the occasional rustle of the leaves in the distance. Stars so dense in the sky that there was no true blackness between them. A slight light off to the east was moving to the west. The light began to get bigger as if it was coming towards me. High up in the sky, the UFO, stopped right above me. I was beginning to get excited. This might be it. I might have finally seen an actual UFO. I might get my close encounter. I might even be able to go with them. Other colors began swirling around the central light. Greens and reds and yellows began dancing circles around the intense blue light. A soothing voice rings out, but I don't hear it. I feel it. Do not be afraid. I feel myself stand up and continue looking up at this magnificent sight. I feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up and my skin begin to prickle. A translucent beam of deep blue light surrounds me now. This is it, I exclaim. I am excited in the first second. Then the next second, something in my hind brain flips and panic overwhelmed me. I run. I don't remember picking a direction. I just flat out run. The headache begins to lessen as the memories wash through me. There's less unknown to be afraid of. It is finally being replaced by the excitement that I have always wanted. I am sitting with an extraterrestrial. I have been taken aboard their craft. Yes, you have, the voice responds. At some point, you will be able to open your eyes and you will be able to see what is around you. Slowly, I open my eyes. White, bright light shines all around. I keep my eyes cast down to not take in as much at once. My breathing is finally under control and the panic is at bay. It is bright. I am still in the clothes from the desert. I have dust and scratches on my land from the fall. Yes, you fell. It was a blessing, actually. Your headache would have been much worse if you would have still been moving. My eyes finally gaze up from my hands. I'm sitting on a white sheet. I see a white rug under my bed that I'm sitting on. Raising my head and looking out farther, I see another set of feet. I scan up from the longest feet I've ever seen. They are topped by skinny ankles. Above those ankles is the hem of a white robe. My eyes take in the rest of a long legged, thin being. I figure his knees are hunched up, sitting in the chair opposite me. His delicate fingers are cradled in his lap. I see an enormous set of eyes supported by a pencil like neck. There's not much of a face, a couple of holes that I would call a nose. I'm more fascinated than I am afraid. I think humans are wonderful looking. There's not much variety. That is why we have so many. You each have many different talents. The not voice whispers. I swallow. There are more humans here? I begin to search beyond this being. I see that I'm in a room with transparent walls. Outside my walls are many other rooms. Each of those rooms has someone else in it. I see other beings similar to my visitor walking alone in pairs or in larger groups. Looking into the rooms, I gesturing this way and that. They must be observing and commenting like we do at the zoo. Hey, mommy, watch the pandas. Aren't they cute? I see a man and a woman sitting at a table in the cage next to mine. They appear resigned. The man upends a bag of dominoes. The white rectangular bones showered to the tabletop, bouncing haphazardly. The alien onlookers bounce excitedly. We're on display. I speak out loud to hear the sound of my voice. Yes, a magnificently enjoyable display. You will be well cared for. He rose from his chair, ducking his head to keep from hitting his eyes on the ceiling, pressed a section of the wall, and stepped out. I watched him walk away with a feeling of wonder. All right. The next story is entitled The Zoo Hypothesis. Yes, the zoo hypothesis. Technician Sarah Jeffries floated into the space shuttle's canteen. Chen, the prank loving co pilot, sank back to his seat after tacking a sign above the table, christening the room as Mouse Isley. Did you bring him? The pilot Varnish reached out a hand. Sarah rolled her eyes and tossed a bag of dominoes to her two crewmates. The bag hurled through zero gravity, and when Varnish caught it by her corner, pieces showered out in slow motion. Chen grinned at the mess and deployed a sticky contraption that spread out and captured all the wayward dominoes at once. He adhered the pieces to the Velcro playing board face down in three areas. Have a seat. Our autopilot is reliable, Sarah glanced back. But shouldn't one of us say, sit down? Varnish smiled and swung out a chair on its metal arm. We convinced NASA to add game night to the schedule. Besides, it's your turn to introduce a trope for discussion. Sarah maneuvered to the chair, strapped herself in, and played the first domino. How about the zoo hypothesis? Chen groaned. Aliens keeping our whole solar system closed off like we're an attraction? How would they control our radio telescope observations or hide Dyson swarms around every visible star? Nah, you gotta keep the prank small enough to be manageable. Varnish raised a finger towards Chen in contradiction. Advanced alien civilizations might not use Dyson swarms for solar collectors. We're assuming human levels of population, which would need more power to live and work off Earth. A hive mind, though, would want to maximize its power. Solar collectors provide easy, mass producible energy. Chen attached another domino to the board. Even if aliens hid themselves, how would they confine us to Earth? This mission of ours to reach the edge of the solar system should have been canceled if they controlled our society. If they follow a prime directive. Their space shuttle stopped, but Sarah's seatbelt prevented her from flying out of the chair. What did we hit? Varnish crashed into the nearest wall, and Chen kicked off the table to strike the ceiling instead of ramming into the captain. Chen and Varnish righted themselves. Sarah unhooked her seatbelt. All three rushed to the command module. Comms are blocked. The emergency subdued Chen's joking manner. White nose from an unknown source is interfering with our transmitter. No damage. Varnish tapped the display. What stopped the shuttle? Sarah pointed out via a porthole. That did. They're boarding us. An entity with 4 legs and 4 arms stood at the far end of a tunnel, which ran from the alien ship to their shuttle. Screeching, grinding sounds scraped against their hull where the strange material touched it. Sarah grabbed a handhold nearer to the fused silica glass of the porthole, entranced. The tunnel seemed thinner, yet more flexible and more stable than any element discovered by humans. It dug into the shuttle's hull and ground away, cutting an opening. Varnesh shoved something into Sarah's free hand. Its fingers probed its shape, a small oxygen tank and a mask. She attached it to her face as the ship's hull fell away and the being entered on its four tentacles. Hello, Varnish addressed the alien. I'm Captain Varnesh Patel. This is the Space Shuttle Atlas. We're from Earth. And you? I don't enjoy conversing with lower life forms. A speaker in the being suit translated warbling sounds from an octopus like beak. However, I must discern from you. How did you escape from your cage? What are you talking about? We're not in a cage, Chen pushed forward to argue. Sarah raised one arm a few centimeters to dissuade Chen. None of the crew knew if this alien or its ship possessed weapons. You mean the solar system, right? It's our species enclosure. In what? Some kind of interstellar zoo? Our people built this vessel to explore the edge of the solar system, Varnish explained. Didn't you read the faked readings we sent? The being asked. No signs of life, just radiation and desolation for light years. Humans must be stupid animals to escape their cages in such an uninviting external environment. The being lifted one tentacle to its helmet and warbled an untranslated command. In response, a panel on the alien ship brightened as though charging a weapon. The alien slithered back into the tunnel, retreating from the doomed vessel. Wait, Sarah said. You don't need to destroy us. We can go back and tell humans we're limited to this solar system. The alien's compound eyes narrowed. Your kind is persistent. Only disasters convince them to abandon new ventures. But the disaster need not be absolute. We could kill one of you as a warning and alter the minds of the survivor to consider spacefaring far too perilous. Varnish hurried forward, volunteering himself to save his crew. Sarah interceded. Or you could change their memories to think I died while spacewalking to repair this hole. But instead of killing me, take me to meet the beings who run this zoo. You might discover we're more than mere lower life forms. Well, what do you say? Sarah extended her hand. The alien stared at Sarah as though surprised by her suggestion, but acknowledged her handshake with brief contact from one of its upper tentacles, its head craned to the left. The compromise is acceptable, Sarah of Earth Exhibit A42-HCSE. I am Frablin. Follow me. Sarah trailed after Frablin with one backward glance to be certain the alien sealed up the shuttle's hole behind her. Varnish and Chen wouldn't remember this. She might fail to convince the alien zookeepers to free Earth, but at least her friends would survive. All right. The next story is. Sorry. I believe the next story is Wonderland. Asher woke me when he came into my room. He stood to the side as I dressed and waited. Then he brought a wheelchair up to my bed and helped me into it before taking me into the hall. Come, come, he said as we snaked our way through it. It's important we aren't late. I appeared and off into the first room we passed, curious and tired. Inside there was a light streaming through the window, shining into the gears of grandfather clock. I could hear the tick-tock of that clock over the sound of my wheels as Asher talked in my ear. We need to be there soon, he said. Asher was a punctual man. It's an important date. On my right, there was a room all black and white, and I glimpsed it in four sets of eyes before we had zoomed on through to the next hallway. This time, the room I observed was in front of us, growing closer and closer, as if under a magnifying glass. A strange creature stood in the doorway there, leaning against the frame with a demure smirk. It had teeth so yellow that they flashed like knives, flickering purple ears and glowing cat's eyes. When I turned back to catch it in my periphery, it had vanished, escaped. Asher didn't notice any of this in his single-mindedness. He just kept on hopping forward until we came to the stairs. Then he made a sharp veer off into the elevator, and I could only peek into one last room before our ascension. It was something of a foggy place, where a bulbous form came emerging from within the smoky depths, billowing about in its cape-like wings. I realized it was making the smoke, spilling like caterpillar silk from its legs. When Asher insisted we hurry once more, this time I was glad to move on, except I did not expect the next floor to be worse. The carpet we walked onto was checkered, red and white, with polka dots like a deck of cards, and bag of dominoes had been spilled and dealt in with each other. The walls were dripping with red paint that smelled of roses, as if it had been showered in their blood. And at the end of the hall, before an audience of creatures that had followed us, was a throne. That's where she sat, Asher's queen. Asher smiled when he saw her, leaving me with the animals, all of them who had abandoned their cages just to watch me. I wanted him to stay with me at least, but he was walking up to talk with the monarch, taking an axe which she offered to him on a silver platter. Strangely, it was a clean thing, shiny and new, as if its pristine edges hadn't ever been sullied by another. He took it, returning from beneath the throne to collect my final words. For you, he said, presenting to me, and I wanted to laugh. I thought I heard him say something else too, but in my mind, all I desired was to escape this zoo. So I took the handle, whispering to myself, off with my head, before I swallowed down the last of my tasteless spit and felt the back of my neck go cold. Like that, my dreams all ended. When I opened my eyes again, Asher was standing in front of me with a grin, and I was no longer in a wheelchair. It was just a normal chair. I was in a normal room with normal people and no creatures anxious to spin me into their webs. The throne was a medicine counter, and the axe in my hand was a bottle empty of pills. All right. The next story is this Domino. Domino. Domino's new room was more inside than out, dry and dusty, with grassy clumps and bendy brush. Water trickled from stony lumps into a round where he drank for his thirsty, far from the growlers that roared and flyers that squawked in the far. Tied to a clingy tree with rough, twisty vines, hung a thick rubber round. Domino thought it was sad because no breezes laughed against it. He'd bump it now and then, but its happy never lasted. He tried to tickle it by teetering fluff in its middle, but he kept flopping off. Sip flop, until he gave up and picked up the raggedy bunny, cleaned its ears with his teeth, and kissed love to its button nose. Around and around, with hairy knuckles dragging, he thundered his feet in the gritty dirt, remembering how the shaggy floor in his old room warmed his toes. He thought of Mama Big, whom he loved, Papa Big, whom he feared, and Brother Little, who loved once, but now he hated. He missed the leafy trees that laughed against the bump of breezes outside and the queer plinks that dropped from the high in warm and changed to floaty flakes in cold. He especially missed the twinkles that lived in the black high when the warm round slept and wondered if they missed him too. Soon after, the harsh bright snapped awake. Bigs and littles came to the narrow room with shiny floors and smooth sides on the other side of the hard water and showed their eyes, some open and happy, others slitty and mean. He hated the mean-eyed littles. They'd bang against the hard water, hissing and growling through clenched biters until he boomed his fist against his side to shout them away. How long? He couldn't know because the harsh bright never left its box to make the little darks cross the floor the way the warm round did when it crept across the ends of the high. It was too soon for Domino's stomach to grow hungry, but it did anyway. He clunked the slider that hid the hole where greens and red rounds fell, knowing it wouldn't swoosh. But his hungry didn't care and grumbled louder. He leaned Fluff against the slider and thumped the hard ripples of his tummy to tell it to hush, but his hungry wouldn't listen, so he plucked crawlers from the stiff hairs of his arms and legs and popped a grip of fat ones into his mouth. Crawlers were not as sweet as red rounds, but the ones he chewed softened its grumble. He noticed a happy-eyed Little with fingers spread against the hard water tapping for Domino to do the same on his side. He was smaller than Brother, but had the same fire hair and dots on his nose. Domino liked how his biters crooked, so he placed his on top, closed his eyes, and sleep thought about his old room. Long and long, Mama brought Brother to jump with him and fluff on the bouncy sleeper. They'd push shapes in whole boxes and play clackety squares while she scratched a stick against leaves of featherwood, and Papa showed be careful eyes while the behaving stick slept on his shoulder. After many creeps of the warm round, he learned to push the right dots together, which made Mama laugh and clap her hands. She said Domino was a smart Rilla, that he'd won the play game. That's when Brother's eyes turned mean. He was looking at the twinkles in the dark high, cuddled in his sleeper, when Brother slipped into his room without Mama and Papa. He was holding the bag of click IDs. Domino thought it was bad and felt a sour tingle, but he loved playing with clickadees as much as he loved Brother, so he kept hush. Instead of dropping them on the play stump, Brother showed the squares where he was cuddled. Then he pices on up and licked it like it was sweet as red round and said, delicious, a yummy bag of dominoes for you to eat. Brother poked it hard against Domino's lips and said, eat it. He shoved the clickety past his lips and biters so hard it scraped his mouth top. His biters clamped with a crackly crunch and felt something hard and soft floosh down his throat in a warm, salty sweat. He tried to spit them out, but only managed to burp a puddle of wet red. Brother screamed. Papa Big boomed upon the door. When he saw the wet squirting from nubs where Brother's fingers used to be, the behaving stick woke and bonked Domino hard until twinkles danced around his head. Mama watched from the doorway with sad eyes, her face as white as a floaty flake. Through clenched biters, Papa growled at Mama. Her stupid cost Brother his fingers. They should have sent Domino away before he'd gotten so big. Papa bonked Domino again and again until the twinkles went dark. He woke under the harsh bright that never moved, a pointy hurt behind his eyes, and rips of white hugging his head. That was long and long. Domino's was filled with lonely. He hated this room and Brother for pushing the clickety past his biters. He wanted to tell Mama sorry and promised to be a smart Rilla, but she never showed her eyes behind the hard water. He had almost forgotten about his hungry when the slider swooshed and let greens and red rounds tumble. When it tried to swoosh back, Fluff blocked it with his tummy, which made Domino burn angry. He wiggled his fingers inside and tore the slider off the raggedy bunny, cleaned its ear with his teeth, and kissed love to its button nose. Then he scrunched as tight as he could and squeezed through the hole, hoping his old room was close. All right. The next one is the Space Monkey. Mommy! Mommy! Natalie tried to ignore her daughter. If I had $1 every time I heard that friggin' word, she yearned for another few precious seconds to watch the geckos in their vivarium as they flitted around their enclosure, living in the moment. Their antics reminded her more of birds than of vibrantly colored reptiles. Going to the Metro Zoo was the worst. Caged animals pacing endlessly in their cells, just like being imprisoned in a dead relationship with Tom, her soon to be ex husband. There was a tug on her sleeve. Mommy, over here! Over there! Natalie closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Yes, sweetie, what is it? Space Monkey. What? Her eyes followed her daughter's pointed finger, but nothing stood out. Just another souvenir store. Every time they walked past one, Kelly begged to go inside. Single parenting is exhausting. Then she saw it, a stuffed animal in the window. It was a chimpanzee wearing an astronaut suit, nearly half the size of her daughter. It was ridiculous and made her chuckle. All right, let's go see the space monkey. Minutes later, they exited the shop. Part of Natalie hated herself for indulging her preschooler with another toy that would be collecting dust in a week. But if it bought her a few hours of peace, it was worth it. Their next stop was a food cart for ice cream cones, but just as they got in line, a group of security personnel ran past. Soon after, an older woman wearing a polo shirt with Nancy printed on her name tag approached. We're sorry, ma'am, but the zoo will be closing early today. Please proceed to the exit. Why? What's going on? Nothing to be concerned about. The lemurs escaped from the primate house, Nancy said, rolling her eyes. Again. They arrived home about an hour later. After repeated failed attempts at getting her kid to eat more than a few bites of dinner, it was bath time. Kelly insisted on including the stuffed chimpanzee. Mommy, Timmy needs tubby time too. Timmy. Oh, the stupid chimp has a name. No, princess, he can't get wet. Her huge green eyes started to swell with tears. But how about if he sits on the counter and keeps an eye on you instead? Kelly's bottom lip quivered as she nodded. Can you watch the night lights with me? Not his crap again. Lights in the sky, hopping around like frogs. Ugh. Fine, but you have to stay in your bed tonight. Promise? Kelly beamed. Promise. With their daughter situated, Natalie headed downstairs and poured a glass with a gratuitous amount of wine, took 2 deep gulps, and filled it back up. Her thoughts drifted to her almost ex-husband and wondered why she still hadn't taken the family portrait down from the mantel. Every time she saw Tom's lying smile, she wanted to throw it into the fireplace. Tomorrow, perhaps. The drumroll of small feet upstairs pulled her back to the present. She cracked her neck, swallowed the rest of her drink, and trudged up the stairs. There was Kelly running naked down the hallway, blonde curls dripping water all over the hardwood. She held her new toy out at arm's length like it was flying across as she ran, making whooshing noises and managing not to slip on the wet floor in the way only 4-year-olds can. We're going to play in the nightlights, Timmy. Natalie grabbed a towel from the bathroom and gave chase. By the time she managed to wrangle her preschool into her bed, she felt more exhausted than she had after working a 10-hour shift at Rizzo's, the restaurant where she first met Tom. She wished she didn't hate him, but she did. She debated about refilling her empty wine glass, but exhaustion won out and she went to her lonely room. All she wanted was the nothingness of being unconscious, but her restless mind had other plans. All her wrong turns and bad decisions kept tugging at her thoughts. Missed opportunities showered her with regret. Frustrated, she reached for an Ambien from the nightstand and dry swallowed it. The next thing she knew, she was jostled awake by small hands. Come see the spaceman! He's here! God, I just want some rest. Go back to your room, Pumpkin. You had a dream, that's all. He's here, she urged, and he's taking me with him. But I need to go now, Mommy. Love you, she said, kissed her mom on the forehead, then skipped away, leaving a trail of giggles in her wake. Natalie cracked open one eye as her daughter left the room. Good night, kid. She closed her eyes and started to slip back into sleep, but unexpected brightness pushed past her eyelids and intensified like someone turned the dial all the way up on a dimmer switch. What the hell? She crawled out of bed and into the hallway. The light wasn't coming from there, but further from Kelly's room, reddish and flickering like a campfire. In a near panic, she burst into her room. Her foot landed on a bag of dominoes, twisting her ankle. Cursing, she limped into the room. No sign of Kelly. The huge window at the far end was open, curtains flapping in the wind. She ran to it, heart hammering in her chest, afraid of what she would see. But the only thing on the concrete driveway below was the stuffed animal. The little space monkey splied out like a suicide. The light shifted and Natalie realized that it was coming from outside, not the bedroom. An orange ball of luminescence hovered a few hundred feet away in the field, moving away. Then, without a sound, the orb shot up straight into the sky, her mind unable to make sense of what her eyes were telling her shattered. Kelly? She was still screaming when the paramedics arrived. All right, and the final story is entitled Back to the Beginning. Kind of a fitting title for the last one. The hair-curling fragrance of burnt paper mixed with candy shop caramel filled Allie's nostrils. She tried to block out the horrific images and willed her panicked heartbeat out of her ears as the previous reality faded into blackness. And a flash of light and color, a new world, a different dimension, pixelated and showered into focus. This brought with it a sweet scent of evergreen trees, a salty popcorn, and a distant stench of dung? Where did her dominoes take her this time? She still didn't understand how they worked. Their patterns were too confusing, and no layout ever gave consistent results. Years went by with her arranging dominoes, then jumping through the portal into the next plane of existence with the tangy taste of tin lingering in her mouth. Many realities were nightmarish. Some days she regretted stealing the bag in her childhood, while part of her reveled in an act that saved her from a life of abuse and neglect. If she ever found the original owner, she would convince her to reveal their secrets. Once everything stopped materializing, she gathered up the layout and returned the dominoes to the bag secured to her belt. Trees surrounded her, but beyond them, sounds of chattering people walked along a nearby path. She headed toward them until the greenery ended to find normal humans milling around in groups. At least she wouldn't stand out in this universe for once. With a delighted sigh, she leaned against a tree trunk but stumbled through it instead. The phony tree flickered with digitized pulses as if mocking her. Landing on her backside, she glared at the fake trees, only to receive a blast of malodorous air to the face. The intense scent of artificial forest filled her senses until she gagged. She hadn't experienced that unmistakable odor of stickly sweet pines in ages. How many dimensions made that product? Through bleary eyes, she managed her way to the path alongside other groups of people. As she rubbed the perfume of sappy forest out of her face, the permeating stink of dung still hinted that ungulate animals grazed around somewhere. She wandered the path as it led to an open enclosure with a family of elephants. Beyond them lived a herd of giraffes. A zoo! Relief washed over her in waves, releasing the muscle tension lingering from the last reality. Of all the random places, finally the dominoes took her to someplace enjoyable for a change. Zoos represented the only fond childhood memory she possessed. When was the last time she went to a zoo? Not since before she started jumping through dimensions. At a leisurely pace, she gave into the serenity of watching animals in their exhibits. But each habitat seemed too familiar, like a half forgotten memory resurfacing as deja vu. When the faraway sound of a panther's piercing roar caused her to jump, all her memories came flooding back, and she reached for her domino bag, only to clutch at empty air. She stole her own dominoes. How could she have missed every clue? As people scurried away, she ran towards the generated gardens. She couldn't deny it now. This is where it all began. Beyond the trees, the crackling sound of a portal opening meant she was close. The blue electric edges of it distorted the leaves. She burst through the artificial foliage and saw herself as a child, standing with hair whipped wild by a swirling vortex and a bag of dominoes clutched in her tiny hand. Her eyes were saucer sized and transfixed with the magic before her, until she turned and they locked eyes for a moment. She relived the flush of fear from the woman catching her, not understanding it was herself grown up. Alia reached out to her younger self, but she dove into the portal to escape. The opening zapped closed like a blinking eye. Before the wind settled, the escaped panther exploded through the trees with a fresh shower of pixels, while shouting zookeepers hollered to each other from behind. The black wildcat froze in front of her, hackles raised and eyes full of panic. It threatened her with an ear-splitting roar. Her chest tightened, ready to react. Out of habit, Ali motioned toward her belt when it hit her with a sickening reality. She couldn't run away this time. Her mind went numb. One of the zookeepers called out from the trees, "What are you doing here? Get out of the way!" An arm grabbed her from behind and pulled her back through the digital foliage. As she tumbled backward, her legs gave out and she fell on top of her rescuer in a heap. Ali rolled away and sputtered, "I'm so sorry." She landed on a woman in a fancy purple waistcoat. "Not to worry," she made a cursory check. "I'm quite all right. How about yourself?" The sounds of tranquilizer guns fired behind them, followed by a sawing roar. I think I'm okay." Ali rubbed her legs free of shock. "I didn't mean to be in here. I was following someone." Ali took a second glance at the woman. She recognized that coat. It was the same fabric as the domino bag. She gaped and pointed. "That's so observant," the woman smiled. "I knew you would make your way back here. When a new member finds one of our sets, no one knows for sure if they'll ever survive, let alone return to the moment that began their journey. But you did it." She clapped her knees in excitement as she stood and held out a hand to her. "Emergene Peterbilt, DSS, that's Dimension Shifters Society. Allow me to welcome you into the fold. Now, let's set you up with your own bag. I bet you're dying to know how they work." "More than anything," Ali said, clasping Emergene's hand, who pulled her off the ground and onto the next adventure. All right, so I am very glad that I don't get to decide who the winner is, but you get to decide that. I am going to be throwing in a uh, a way for you to hold on here, a way for you to respond. Yep. All right, I'm going to be putting it into the chat. I think that should work. Hopefully. You may have to like copy and paste it. I don't know if it'll show up as a link. All right. And I put a little bit of a description to try to clarify in case you don't remember the titles, because, there were quite a few stories there. All right. Really, like everything was so fantastic. Everyone's so fantastic. All right. While we're waiting for the results to come in, I definitely do want to put in another shout out for our accountability club. If you're not an AutoCrit Pro member, this is a great time to become a pro member. Because you can become a pro member at 60% off the general monthly membership fee by becoming an annual member. And I'm going to throw that in hold on, if I can get the link, I'm going to throw that into the chat. And I'll also put it in the comments in the description for this uh, video. But you can become an annual member, and it's a great way for you to become part of the AutoCrit community. Now, what that means is, okay, you've got 52 weeks in a year, right? Or, so they say. Uh, if you were to come to the accountability club, on a weekly basis and use it as a great resource for you to stay consistent in your writing, it's going to be less than a cup of coffee. If you come to a bunch of the writing clubs, maybe the accountability club, horror club, and fantasy club, then you're getting to the point where each time you enter one of the clubs, it's not even the price of a candy bar. And of course, that doesn't even account for the fact that there's a member community and the writing desk. So it really is a fantastic deal. AutoCrit is a wonderful place. I just always hear so many comments from people that join the community and their writing really takes off. They get encouraged, they get excited. It's just a great thing. Now, I mentioned that Kat. Congratulations, Kat. You're our first winner today for getting the 16% right. Got a free workshop. And yes, next month we're going to have the character chemistry workshops. And this is going to be a way for you to analyze how you're using the characters in your book. What's important is not only that you make compelling characters, but that you make them work in harmony with each other. Or perhaps, polar opposites, right? So we're going to do both. We're going to do a workshop about what we call love, and those are positive relationships, characters that love each other, romance, friendship, mentorship, anything like that. And then we're going to do hate, characters that can't stand each other, arch nemesis, frenemies, rivals, etc. And we're going to discuss the way to get the most out of those dynamics. So if you want to sign up for those workshops, I'll go ahead and put the link on the screen right there. There are two of them, love and hate, or you can get both of them. Now, workshops do come with personalized feedback as well. So it'll be a online presentation, and you can ask me questions live, and they're 90-minute sessions. We do two of them. We do one in the afternoon and one in the evening to try to cover all our bases in time. And there'll be two for each of these. So 4 sessions altogether. And you can come to all of them if you want. It's just the same slide deck each time. So you don't have to come to both if you don't want to. And like I said, you get that personalized feedback as part of it as well. I'm going to give it another moment for you to fill out that survey. Don't forget the fantasy club. Yes, you could join the league of these beautiful people. Actual screenshot from our last Skype. No, we do fantasy clubs every Tuesday for our members at 7 p.m. Tonight, we're going to be discussing tropes. And this is honestly a great one, even if you don't write fantasy, because maybe you don't write fantasy as the genre, but you like some of the fantasy tropes. We're going to discuss some tropes of fantasy, how to use them well, when to overuse them, things like that. And of course, we have our horror club. Horror tomorrow is going to have a special guest. Horror is with Gareth typically. And the special guest is going to be New York Times bestseller Christopher Golden. So that's a great opportunity for our pro members. He's the author of Ararat, Snowblind, Dead Ringers, Road of Bones. Awesome to have somebody of his caliber in the studio with us. So definitely looking forward to that. All right. That being said, I'm curious which one is the winner. Let's see if I have enough results in order to give a clear winner here. How many people responded? All right. Wow, it is quite divided, but it does appear that the number one story is smash that like button, ring that notification bell. So yeah, you really liked the dark YouTube take. That was compelling. I really liked the way that one ended particularly. But yes, that is the number one story, but it was it was quite close between them, and every single one at least got a vote. So you all did earn your spot in the finalists. So fantastic, fantastic to you. Um, if you, I don't know if that person is watching. If you are watching and you want to reveal yourself, you may. Otherwise, I'm not going to do that for you. But that is the winning one. Oh, Tammy, waiting for the Sci-Fi Club. That is coming next week. So yes, yes, go ahead and do it. Yes, yay, congrats. They were all so good today. It was hard to pick. It really was. Now, if you did not win, do not be discouraged because there were a lot of great entries that just weren't quite at that level. And some of this does get subjective, right? Of course. So, um, wait, is that you? You're saying sweet. I don't think that's you. I don't think that's the writer, but it might be. Uh, oh. Some whoever wrote it is teaching class. I'm sorry you were not here to bask in your glory, but congratulations. Congratulations. But next month, next week, we're going to start a brand new challenge. And if you want to find out more about that new challenge, head on over to autocrit.com. You can find the details about that next challenge. The next challenge is going to deal with character relationships, kind of ties into the character chemistry workshop. It's going to be about writing a scene in which you can indicate characters forming a relationship with each other. And it could be any different type of relationship. So it's going to be quite open. But next month, we're going to talk more about connection. Somebody's like, a love challenge. It can be. It doesn't have to be though. You could write a story about people who hate each other. It's all right. We're very accommodating around here at the Grit. So yes, please do so. Please join that. And if you would like some personalized feedback on what you submitted, you can get it. You would have gotten a link when you first submitted it. But you also, if you participated in the challenge, you're going to get a follow-up link, and that allows you to get personalized feedback for what you submitted for the challenge. And it's a special deal. It's a discounted rate. It's a great way to get some personalized feedback. So if you maybe want to know what you could have improved on, you can certainly do that as well. And even if you didn't submit an entry, if you decide you still want to do it, yeah, just go ahead and purchase it, and then we'll reach out to you. All right. Yeah. So, aren't getting questions about the next challenge? I'm not going to tell you that much details about it because that'll give you a jump start on everybody else. It starts next week. Be there. And we're going to dive into more. Otherwise, I will see you around the AutoCrit community, maybe tonight in the fantasy club. Maybe you can join us tomorrow for our special guest. I just loved this challenge. Just another congratulations, everybody. It was really good. I mean, I'm not just saying that. It was good. Like, you heard them. They were good. So this is a great community. Thank you for being part of it. And you have a wonderful rest of your week. Bye, everybody.